Welcome to a new time. Welcome to a new era.
This ain't WCW. This ain't Monday Night Raw. This ain't SmackDown. This ain't even WWE.
Feel the wrath of the pythons. You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania. This is where the power lies.
And that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
I got a 66 and 2/3 chance of winning because Kurt Angle knows he can't beat me and he's not even going to try.
It's time to step into the squared circle and get it done.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Legends and Champions podcast, episode number 2. My name's Andy Evans, coming to you from the United Kingdom. And this week, we have a massive monster of a show. Because today is going to be all about looking at the legacy and the top matches of the icon, the Heartbreak Kid, Mr. WrestleMania, the show stealer, Shawn Michaels. So we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to find out a bit more about who Shawn Michaels really is. Born Michael Shawn Hickenbottom on July the 22nd of 1965, Michaels grew up in a military family and spent much of his childhood moving from base to base. From an early age, he had a passion for athletics, excelling in football, but it was really professional wrestling that truly captured his heart. He was inspired by legendary superstars such as the Nature Boy Ric Flair and the American Dream Dusty Rhodes. Shawn decided to pursue his dream of becoming a pro wrestler, enrolling in training under the tutelage of the legendary Jose Lothario. Now, it wasn't long before Shawn made his debut, starting his career in Texas at the age of 19. He first caught the eyes of fans in the AWA, otherwise known as the American Wrestling Association, where he formed a tag team with Marty Jannetty. Then known as the Midnight Rockers, their high-flying, energetic style brought them success and soon caught the attention of the World Wrestling Federation. In 1988, Shawn and Marty made their WWF debut, and their fast-paced acrobatic matches quickly won the fans over. But it wasn't until Shawn broke away from Jannetty in 1992 after what is now an iconic moment when he threw his partner through the barbershop window that his career really began to skyrocket. This was the birth of the Heartbreak Kid as we knew him back then. And of course, he was paired up with one of the most legendary female performers of all time, Sensational Sherry. And Michaels, he reinvented himself. No longer was he this schoolboy blonde-haired rocker. Now he was the charismatic, arrogant heel who was as brash as he was talented. His in-ring style was both revolutionary, blending technical prowess with high-flying maneuvers, and his ability to tell a story in the ring was unmatched. Throughout the 1990s, Shawn racked up numerous championships, becoming a 2-time Royal Rumble winner and capturing the WWE Championship on multiple occasions. But it was his rivalry with Bret the Hitman Hart which really took him to that stratosphere. This was one of the most intense and personal in any feud within wrestling history, culminating in the infamous Montreal Screwjob at the Survivor Series of 1997. This event, where Shawn won the championship under controversial circumstances, is still debated by wrestling fans to this day. Was it legit? Was it work? Was it kayfabe? We will talk about that in an upcoming episode where hopefully I'm going to be joined by Mike McGuire to discuss all about the 1997 Survivor Series. But regardless of what it was or what fans think it was a moment that really defined the Attitude Era, a time when the WWF were pushing boundaries and redefining what professional wrestling could be. Remember, as we talked about last week on Nitro, they were in a war with WCW. They had to do something different. But the one thing about Shawn Michaels is that his career wasn't just about titles and rivalries. It was about the unforgettable matches he delivered, especially, as we said at the top of this, when it came to WrestleMania. From his ladder match at WrestleMania 10 with Razor Ramon to his Iron Man match against the Hitman Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12 to his emotional bouts with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25 and 26, Shawn Michaels earned his reputation as Mr. WrestleMania, a performer who never failed to steal the show. But as with everybody, it wasn't smooth sailing. In the late 1990s, Shawn's life took quite a dark turn. Injuries, substance abuse, and personal demons almost derailed his career for good. In 1998, after suffering a debilitating back injury during a match with The Undertaker, Shawn was first forced into early retirement, and many thought that his in-ring career was over. And in the 4 years that he was away, he made various appearances. He was the commissioner. He was a part of the NWO. Yeah, try and forget that. But really, Shawn wasn't Shawn. And he's gone out and documented quite a lot in WWE documentaries about, he was on a downward spiral. And it's when he found religion that he really turned his life around. And we saw that 4 years later in 2002, because after 4 years away from the ring, Michaels made one of the most miraculous comebacks ever. As we mentioned, he was a born-again Christian, and he returned with a new perspective both on life and on wrestling. He was a father, and he was married to Rebecca from the Nitro Girls. He went on to have another 8 to 10 years of stellar performances, delivering classic matches with the Game Triple H, the Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle, and of course, the certifiable Hall of Famer Chris Jericho, as well as many others. His second run not only solidified his legacy, but also endeared him to a whole new generation of fans. And in some ways, people will actually turn around, and I'm one of them, by the way, that will actually turn around and say, you know what? This second streak, this second run that Michaels had was in some ways far superior and far more encompassing than the first run he had in the 80s and the 90s. Shawn, to everybody who was watching, I've been a fan since 1987. Shawn looked happy. He looked like he was legitimately going out there and having fun. The skits that he did with the reformed Triple H as DX, maybe nowhere near as risque as they were in the Attitude Era, were just funny. They were humorous. He pushed the boundaries without going against his moral compass. And that, I think, is what has endured his legacy, because as much as Shawn was a great performer, and we've talked about some of those matches in the early to mid 90s, his backstage reputation always damaged him. It always affected him. This was a chance to give him a second chance. You don't get those very often, and he took full advantage of it. Now, his final match came at WrestleMania 26 in 2010, where he faced The Undertaker in a streak versus career match. Arguably one of the greatest matches of all time from any wrestling promotion, regardless of WCW or TNA or ECW, whatever. This is up there as one, if not the greatest match. True to his word, Shawn did retire from full-time competition, ending his career on the highest note possible. But even in retirement, Shawn's influence on the wrestling world has been absolutely profound. He's moved to a backstage role, helping to train and mentor the next generation of superstars at the Performance Center. His contributions behind the scenes have ensured that his legacy will live on through the wrestlers he's helped shape. And we're seeing that each and every week on NXT. We're seeing the likes of Joe Gacy. We've seen it with the like of Bron Breakker, with Cora Jade, with Nikita Lyons, with Tiffany Stratton. He is, in my opinion, as much of a pinnacle, as much of a founding block, as important as the legacy of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. In 5-10 years' time, we'll have talked about the Dusty's Boys. We'll have talked about Seth Rollins. We'll have talked about Cody Rhodes. We'll have talked about Mark Henry. We will now be talking about the guys and the girls that Shawn has trained, that Shawn has had an impact with. That's exciting. He's a 2-time WWE Hall of Famer. He's a legend whose impact on professional wrestling is just immeasurable. Whether it was his jaw-dropping athleticism, his uncanny ability to connect with the audience, or just his willingness to push the boundaries of what was possible in the ring. The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, is truly one of the greatest of all time. And in fact, if you did a Mount Rushmore of professional wrestlers, Michaels certainly is going to be on there. Coming up after the break, we are going to be looking at the top 15 matches in the career of the Heartbreak Kid, in my opinion. I will stress that. We'll see you after this.
Hey, yo, how many of you here came to listen to your same generic wrestling podcast? Or how many of you came to listen to the alternate commentary table every single Saturday?
You're going to get our perspective of what the real fans of wrestling think, and no one does it like us.
Subscribe and stream to the McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed anywhere where you're streaming your podcasts. Survey says one more for the Greek guys.
Chair shot.
All right, welcome back to the top 15 countdown of the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. How is this going to work? Well, for each match, I'm going to let you know who we competed against, obviously, what TV show or pay-per-view it was a part of, and we're also going to give you the Meltzer rating, so you can find out exactly what Dave thought of that match during it happened on the Wrestling Observer. All right, let's do this, shall we? Kicking off number 15, we're going back to 1994, the 30th of October, on the WWF Action Zone. It was the Heartbreak Kid and Big Daddy Cool Diesel facing off against the bad guy Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid. And this really was where Michaels kind of got comfortable, because during the mid-90s, he formed a backstage group alongside Nash, Hall, Waltman, and later Triple H, known as the Clique. And they dominated the WWE for a long time during the New Generation era. Now, this is one of those matches where you saw the Clique in action. And it's important because it was a grounding. It kind of showed how these four would get together. It didn't break the mold. It didn't break the barriers. It didn't transcend time. But it was an early snapshot about how good this group was. Number 14 in the list is WWE Monday Night Raw from April the 30th, 2007, where he went up against John Cena. And he had really an entertaining feud with Cena that saw them wrestling over Cena's WWE Championship in the main event of WrestleMania 23, and even briefly holding the World Tag Team titles. However, the highlight of their feud happened on an episode of Raw. 6 days before Backlash of that year, where both men competed in a great four-way match, also involving Edge and Randy Orton, the pair nailed it in what was a breathtaking 55-minute non-title match. After putting Cena over at WrestleMania, the veteran Michaels found a way to win the contest after delivering his sweet chin music. Meltzer liked it so much, he gave it 4.25 in the ratings. Number 13 in the list is going back to SummerSlam of 1995. It was for the Intercontinental Championship, and again, it was going up against a member of the Clique, the bad guy, Razor Ramon. Now let's caveat this by saying Meltzer gave it 4.75 on the rating, and there is no doubt that the iconic ladder match between Shawn and Razor Ramon took place at WrestleMania 10. But because that match is just so legendary, we often forget just how amazing the rematch at SummerSlam was. And some of the most unique spots from Mania were brought back. Namely, Michaels doing a splash off the ladder. Ramon blocked the move this time around, which was a great instance of continuity. Michaels got the win back at SummerSlam, and he successfully retained the Intercontinental Championship. I mean, this is one of those matches that I always tend to go back to. It's one that, you know, if I just want to shove a match on for 15, 20 minutes just to kind of get lost in it, this is the one I'll put on. Because WrestleMania 10 was a classic. You know, there's no doubt about that. It really was a true classic. But this is the lost gem. And give it a chance. If you haven't seen it, give this one a chance.
We're in the igloo, a record-setting crowd watching this extraordinary, historic event at SummerSlam. Michaels, Razor Ramon, rematch of the century. It could very well be.
Will it be the same result as WrestleMania 10? Will history repeat itself?
For over a year, this has been eating me. You know, I made history, but I was the losing part, and I can't have that. I'm the one with everything to lose and nothing to gain, but I need this for me.
Boy toy, Chico, it is not just your precious gold that is on the line. It is your body, your career.
Razor Ramon, rest assured, wild horses, nothing is going to keep the Heartbreak Kid from traveling up that ladder and taking the World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental title.
Oh no, wait a minute, here it comes, Razor's Edge! Oh no! Now this shot, can Michaels do it? Yes! Shawn Michaels, the most resilient superstar there is today, deservingly put the Intercontinental Championship belt over his shoulder.
Number 12 on the list is going up against the feud. Bret the Hitman Hart. It's the WWE Championship, or the WWF Championship, that winged eagle at the 1992 edition of the Survivor Series. Meltzer gave this a 4.5 out of 5 because back in the golden era, the championship picture was dominated by those heavyweight performers like Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior. But two men changed the game with the new generation. Bret the Hitman Hart and the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Their most famous and infamous battles took place in the years of 1996 and 1997. But they clashed way back before that in 1992. At that year's Survivor Series event, both men tore the house down in a wrestling match that was just superb. The psychology with the veteran Bret Hart in control early on, while Michaels got the upper hand later on. Hart was the fighting champion. He'd won it not that much earlier against Ric Flair at a house show in Saskatoon. He proudly went out and defended that championship each and every night, which, ladies and gentlemen, almost cost him the championship. But Bret caught HBK with a creative version of the sharpshooter, won the match.
With me now, the reigning Intercontinental Champion, Shawn Michaels. During the past month, we have witnessed an incredible turn of events in your life. Conspicuous by her absence, your manager, Sensational Sherry, who right now is recovering from injuries she suffered during a confrontation you had with Marty Jannetty. And many believe it was you, to save yourself, who pulled Sensational Sherry
That's a lie.
in front of a charging
That is a bold-faced lie.
Well, nonetheless, without your manager, less than 2 weeks ago, you captured the Intercontinental title from what seemed to be an invincible British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. And tonight, here at the Survivor Series, you face a man many believe is the greatest scientific wrestler of all time, Bret the Hitman Hart. And he is indeed a fighting champion. During his short tenure, he has defended the title more than any man in World Wrestling Federation history.
You want to talk history there, Sean Mooney? Let's talk a little history, okay? Who is the man that beat Bret Hart at SummerSlam for the Intercontinental title?
Well, the British Bulldog.
That's right. Now, who is the man that defeated the British Bulldog quite easily, I might add, to become the new WWF Intercontinental Champion?
Well, you did. Everyone knows.
That's right, and me. Now, For all you mathematical geniuses out there, 1 and 1 make 2. 2 belts. See, when I signed for this match, Hitman, I knew I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Your belt's on the line, mine stays right here. So tonight, all over the world, the last thing the people will hear is, ladies and gentlemen, Shawn Michaels, the Intercontinental Champion, and new World Wrestling Federation Champion,
a very confident Shawn Michaels, the reigning Intercontinental Champion, on his way to the ring. It's champion versus champion.
Number 11 is up against Big Daddy Cool, no holds barred for the WWF Championship at In Your House 7, Good Friends, Better Enemies. Shawn Michaels' boyhood dream, as we all know, came true at WrestleMania 12 when he won the championship in the 60-minute Iron Man match against the Hitman Bret Hart. One of his first title defenses, however, happened on pay-per-view against former friend and Click member Diesel, who blindsided him and challenged him to the match. Now, ironically, this would be Diesel's final match for the WWE, or televised match at least, as he packed his bags and trundled out of the jungle and in to that other jungle called WCW a few weeks later. Now, because of that, Nash and his real-life friend did everything they could to have a phenomenal bout under no holds barred, and that is exactly what they did. It was physical, it was brutal, it was intense, and quite possibly was Nash's best ever match.
If you like McGuire on Wrestling, you need to subscribe to the free McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed. Not only do you get access to the show a day early, but you also get free bonus content every week. Share a laugh with Mitch and Dimitri on the alternate commentary table.
Oh, I'm Cody Rhodes. Look at me.
Now, if this was Damian Priest, he'd apologize.
He probably would have apologized.
Follow along with the film career of one of wrestling's biggest stars with We've Seen a Movie.
Basically, I'm just watching John Cena play his wrestling character.
If John Cena was a raging alcoholic Atlantic City mooch before this.
Get all these shows, exclusive interviews, and more for free by subscribing to McGuire on Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts.
5 down in the countdown. This is the top 10, the pinnacle of matches in the career of the legendary Heartbreak Kid. And kicking off at number 10 with 4.75 in the Meltzer rating was the championship match at In Your House 10. That's funny. Number 10. In Your House 10. It was In Your House 10 Mind Games facing off against Mick Foley, otherwise known as Mankind. Because after that feud with Diesel finished, Michaels continued to deliver some awesome, and that's the only word you can really use, title matches throughout the remainder of 1996. He had great ones with the likes of the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, with Vader as well. But the best match as champion happened against Mankind at Mind Games. When you look at it on paper, it looks a bit weird. You wouldn't think that Mick Foley and Shawn Michaels would work. It's a clash of styles. It's this hardcore brawling style of Mick Foley to this high-flying, charismatic version of Shawn Michaels. But do you know what? It was perfectly executed. Mick's character work as Mankind was on point. Because I think Foley realised at this point that, that was the biggest match at that time of his career. Now, bear in mind, he'd come from WCW. He'd faced off against the likes of Sting. He'd faced off against The Undertaker at SummerSlam 1996 in the Boiler Room Brawl. But this is it. This was it. His chance to win the WWF Championship. Now, we know he did it a couple of years later, but what made this match really special was just these little minor details, like Foley stabbing his own injured leg with the announcer's pen to get the feeling back. These little nuances, ability to kind of see the despair and the pain in Mankind. And ultimately, the wrestling was amazing too. Now, the only downside of this match was the fact it was a DQ ending. And that was flat. And you knew that. The audience knew that. And you saw that in their reaction. But if you took that finish out, if you forgot that finish was there, this was simply phenomenal. Number 9 on the list, again, is against the bad guy, Razor Ramon. It is for the Intercontinental Championship. It is a ladder match. And you guessed it, it is WrestleMania 10. And speaking of ladder matches, Michaels participated in the first ladder match to be held at WrestleMania on pay-per-view. And that, as we said, was in 1994 at Madison Square Garden. And to this day, regardless of TLCs, regardless of the Dudley Boys, regardless of Edge and Christian, regardless of the Hardys, regardless of any of those guys, many fans still consider it to be the best ladder match in professional wrestling history. Why is that? Well, it's because it was historic. It featured matches and it featured spots that fans had never seen before. That infamous splash off the ladder onto Ramon that Michaels did. Now, even though Michaels came up short, what this did was elevate him to that next stratosphere. This all-time classic proved that HBK had everything to be the Hall of Famer and to be the certifiable legend that he is. Meltzer thought so as well, because Meltzer gave it a 5 out of 5. Highest possible rating. Number 8 in our countdown is at Survivor Series 2002, and it's the Elimination Chamber match. Now, bear in mind, as we said earlier on, Michaels had returned in earlier part of 2002 after a 4-year hiatus. 4 years of dealing with injuries, 4 years of dealing with demons. And he came back at SummerSlam. So Michaels is a history maker, because not only did he make history in ladder matches, in his second match back from retirement, he participated in the inaugural Elimination Chamber match. He looked for revenge against Triple H, who at that time was the reigning World Heavyweight Champion. When all 6 competitors got their moments to shine here, this match was clearly about Triple H and Shawn Michaels, who had, as I've just said, stolen the show at SummerSlam. Now, Hunter got injured mid-match, but that couldn't prevent them from having an exciting mini-match in the end, with Michaels kicking out of the pedigree before super kicking the former friend to capture what was and is still his last WWE World Championship. Meltzer gave this 4.5 out of 5. Number 7 on the list, whilst not being the highest Meltzer rated match, he gave it 3.5, is up there because of the emotion. Is up there because of what it represented. And that was the career-ending match at WrestleMania 24 against the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And I think it's fair to say that Michaels had many other opponents that were better from a technical perspective. And in fairness, so did the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. But few were as emotional than this match. With the Nature Boy's career on the line, they told a story that touched everyone watching all over the world. In the build-up to this, Michaels didn't want to accept the match. He didn't want to accept the challenge. Nate was HBK's hero, but he went ahead out of respect for Flair. And in the end, with a super kick, with sweet chin music, with the iconic words being mouthed by Shawn of, "Sorry, I love you," he put the WWE, at least, career of the Nature Boy to bed. And I think it's fair to say that no one will ever forget this iconic matchup.
You're going to step into the ring with Mr. WrestleMania.
I
would expect nothing less from you, my friend, the showstopper, Mr. WrestleMania. That's what I want. Thank you.
Before I go, just so there's no doubt in your mind that you're going to get everything you need and more, I want to remind you of a little story. Remember the story of Old Yeller? They loved that dog. But when it was time, they had to take that dog out back and finish him. Come Sunday, the showstopper's gonna take you, Old Yeller, behind the woodshed and put you out of your misery.
Number 6 on our countdown is WrestleMania 20. It's the triple threat for the World Heavyweight Championship, and it's a bit of a difficult one, this, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because, rightly or wrongly, this match has been basically erased from WWE history since June of 2007 for the reasons that, we're not going to go into. It was, of course, Chris Benoit, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. But regardless of where it is in history or where it sits or who took part in it, it was an absolute cracker. And to this day, I would go on record saying it was one of the best WrestleMania main events of all times. The continuation of the feud between Triple H and Michaels had been going on for years, and Benoit was added to the mix after he won the Royal Rumble of that year. And the three men put on a performance for the ages and literally stole the show. They main evented and they left everything in that ring in MSG. After an intense match with incredible reversals and false finishes, Benoit forced Triple H to submit, and in doing so, became the new World Heavyweight Champion. Meltzer liked it so much, he gave this one 4.75 in the Meltzer ratings. Halfway through our top 10 countdown now, we have already looked at 10 matches in the career of Shawn Michaels. Unbelievable, and there is still so many more to go. But we're going back to WrestleMania. This time, we're going to WrestleMania 21. It scored a 4.75 on the Meltzer rating, and it was against the Olympic gold medalist, Kurt Angle. And I think what we need to kind of talk about here is the fact that, in early 2005, Angle was quite literally the best technical wrestler on SmackDown, whilst Shawn, even though being 3 years back from his retirement, was the best worker on Raw. So this was what WrestleMania should be. It was a dream match. And in doing so, fans went absolutely wild when they began a program during the Royal Rumble of 2005. And I think what is fair is no one was surprised when Shawn and Angle went out, stole the show, and put on a clinic at WrestleMania 21 that fans are still talking about to this day. And bear in mind, we're now in the 40s of WrestleMania. They threw everything at each other, an exciting 30-minute back and forth encounter with Angle actually forcing Michaels to submit to the ankle lock. And if you think about the story leading up to this, some of the things that Angle did, like bringing Sherry out on SmackDown to sing the Shawn Michaels theme song, was just incredible. It was brilliant. It was so well done. This was when WWE were firing on all cylinders and doing some really, really creative but classic stories. Number 4 on our list got 4.5 from Meltzer in the ratings. It was, again, a ladder match. There's a theme here. And it was for the World Heavyweight Championship at No Mercy 2008. And it was against Y2J Chris Jericho. They had what is one of the most spectacular feuds in the WWE when it started back in late 2002. It was originally about Jericho being jealous of Michaels, who had been his childhood hero. He wanted to prove that he was better than Michaels but at WrestleMania 19 fell short after an amazing matchup. But it wasn't until 2008 that the feud really intensified, with Jericho brutally assaulting Michaels several different times and even punching his wife, Rebecca. When it all culminated with one of the best ladder matches ever at No Mercy, it was a great match. And Jericho beating Michaels at his own game, that being the ladder match, the match that Michaels really had become known for, was storytelling at its finest. All right, this is the top 3. Now, before we do that, let's go to a break. We'll be back after this.
I will give you a show like you have never, ever seen before. Why? Because I can.
Shawn Michaels, what a ride! The boyhood dream,
Mr. WrestleMania,
has come true,
has arrived.
Michaels from high above.
Everybody wants to be number one, and there can only be one. I knew nobody could touch me.
Who is the show stopper?
Me.
Who is the main event?
Me. I am simply the very best in the world.
I did it more consistently than anybody else. Just tore the house down.
The man whose name is synonymous with WrestleMania.
Undertaker, people said we had the greatest match in WrestleMania history.
My God, can you believe this man?
I have never been outperformed on the grandest stage of them all, and I never will.
Show stopped by Shawn Michaels.
I am Mr. WrestleMania.
All right, welcome back. This is it, the top 3 matches. And I think it's no surprise to anyone what 3 are going to take it. But what might be the surprise is what order they go in. So number 3, SummerSlam 2002, the unsanctioned match against Triple H. It scored a 4.25 on the Meltzer rating. And as we said, this was the comeback match. This is what fans had been waiting over 4 years to see, HBK back in the WWE ring. And you couldn't really think of anyone better for him to go up against than Triple H. Now, this storyline happened because his former DX buddy turned heel, assaulted Michaels, leading to this street fight at SummerSlam. And fans, including myself, wondered if HBK could still go. Could he deliver the goods? Could he be Shawn Michaels? By God, yes, he could. It was one of the best, one of the most emotional matches in both men's careers. Because the one thing that you can't fake is a relationship. You can't fake a friendship. And this came across. Both of these guys, ultimate respect for each other. They know each other like the back of their hands. They were members of the clique. And this really came across. Shawn picked up the win, but it was, you might have won the battle, but Triple H won the war because he destroyed him afterwards with a sledgehammer, and that feud kept on rolling. Number 2 on the countdown versus The Undertaker. But which year? Was it, and I will tell you it's at WrestleMania, was it WrestleMania 25 or was it WrestleMania 26? Well, both matches scored 4.75 out of 5 in the Meltzer ratings. But we are going to WrestleMania 25 because, and I didn't know this until doing the research for this show, originally WWE wanted Vladimir Kozlov to end the streak. Yeah. Vladimir Kozlov. Where's he now? There we go. But luckily, creative changed. And thank God, because I could not imagine The Undertaker's streak being defeated by Vladimir Kozlov. I mean, no. So both HBK and The Undertaker were in feuds with Kozlov and JBL, respectively, and they were finished by being booked in a match prior to Mania. Now, the reason that this one isn't number one in the list is because ultimately the story wasn't the strongest, but they delivered one of the best WrestleMania matches in history once that bell rang. And I think it's fair to say that The Undertaker over the last few years of his career was kind of hot and cold. You know, one year he could put on a stellar match, the next year it might not be so good. He was injury prone, he was getting old, and we saw that in the match against Roman Reigns, we saw that against Brock Lesnar. To a degree, we even saw that against Triple H. But this one, Undertaker was on his game. And he Michaels kicked out of the tombstone in one of the closest and best near falls, that suspension of disbelief. Undertaker kicked out of Sweet Chin Music and delivered another impressive tombstone to pick up the win. Now the story continues there because Michaels couldn't get this out of his head. He couldn't get this loss gone. He wanted revenge on The Undertaker, and he tried everything he could to get a rematch. And The Undertaker only agreed if Michaels put his career on the line. This was the career versus streak match at WrestleMania 26. And I think there are moments when you watch wrestling that you wish you were sat in the crowd. Recently, it was All In this past August, where Daniel Bryan won the AEW Championship, and that emotion that was sweeping few. But this is one of those matches where those who were in attendance knew they'd witnessed history, regardless of what the result was. Was HBK going to end the streak, or was The Undertaker going to end the career? Ultimately, The Undertaker put Michaels away and ended his legendary career on the main stage in the greatest main event on the grandest stage of them all.
Undertaker again going for a tombstone pile driver, trying to drive the career of Michaels into the burial plot. This is it. The career of Shawn Michaels is over. He kicked out. 70,000 plus on their feet. Shawn Michaels will not surrender. Shawn Michaels has no quit.
The Phenom cannot believe it. Nor can I. Nor can the 70,000 fans.
Undertaker, disbelief for the first time in his career crossing his face. You can feel the emotion. Oh, if Shawn Michaels is going out, he's going out as defiant as ever.
That look of disbelief on the face of The Undertaker has turned into a look of rage.
Tombstone. Here's the cover. The Undertaker is in Pino. Shawn Michaels' career is over.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, was the top 15 matches, in my opinion, of Shawn Michaels. What do you think? I want to know what you think. Do you agree? Do you think I've got the right matches but in the wrong order? Do you think 25 should be ahead of 26? Do you think the unsanctioned match should be number one? Do you think WrestleMania 10 should be higher up the card? Let us know at Team MOW on Facebook or tweet us on X. I want to know what you think. Top matches are subjective. It's down to personal opinion. There is no right or wrong answer. These were mine. I want to know what you think. I want to know what Team MOW presenters think. What does Mike McGuire think? What does Mitch and Dimitri think? Let us know on the show. All right, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, it's the last part. We're going to be looking back at this week in wrestling history. We'll see you after this.
Budweiser presents Real Men of Genius.
Real men of genius.
Today, we salute you, Mr. Pro Wrestling Wardrobe Designer.
Mr. Pro Wrestling Wardrobe Designer.
While lesser designers would shy away from putting 300-pound men in spandex, you embrace it.
Yes, you do.
Pushing fashion to its limits, literally, you pair tights with a cape, a leotard with a mask, leather boots with a thong.
Oh, looking good.
All understated ways of saying, I'm going to rip your head off and look fabulous doing it. So this Bud's for you, Mr. Pro Wrestling Wardrobe Guy. Because without you, a man crushing another man's head in his arms would just look silly.
Mr. Pro Wrestling Wardrobe Designer.
All right, welcome back to Legends and Champions for this week. And this is Wrestling History, where if you've never heard this segment before, we take apart a week that we're in. So this week we're looking at, that was really badly explained. This week we're looking at September 8th to September 14th. We will pick some of the most pivotal moments in wrestling history and let you know what happened. And this will also have some audio to kind of go with them as well. So we're kicking off on September 8th, 2009, as ring announcer Lillian Garcia announced that she's to leave the WWE after a decade working for the company. On September the 9th, 1991, on the primetime wrestling program, the Nature Boy Ric Flair makes his WWF debut after more than a decade of representing the NWA and WCW. In his possession, he had WCW's Heavyweight Championship, announcing himself to be the real world's champion. And what was interesting about this was that the NWA actually took legal action against the WWF, and they had to send the World Heavyweight Championship back. And ultimately, what you would have seen was a digitized image of Flair holding one of the tag team championships. But let's go to the promo with Nature Boy Ric Flair.
For 10 years, it's been two names, Hogan and Flair. Hogan, the WWF champion, Ric Flair, the real world's heavyweight champion. Well, now, they don't know any better. They will. Now, let's bring this down to something that Hogan will have to understand. You don't ignore this. My name's Ric Flair, and I'm going to burst that bubble, big man. And henceforth, big man, Hogan, wherever you walk, in any major airport, in any department store, in any hotel lobby, the question is going to be in your face from everyone. Can you beat Ric Flair? You're going to have to wrestle him, Hulk. I mean, Hulk, you're our hero. You're the man. And Hogan, that's when you're going to have to look inside. You're going to have to say to yourself, well, yeah, am I? I don't know. Well, I know! I'm Ric Flair! And I'm the real world champion. I know! How about that, brain? I guess what I'm saying is, Hogan, put up or shut up.
September 10 is an important day in wrestling history, not just because it's my birthday and also that of my daughter's, but in 2012, WWE Hall of Famer Bret Hart conducted a head-to-head interview between CM Punk and John Cena on the go-home edition of Raw from Montreal, ahead of Clash of Champions. Later in the show, Punk faced an opponent chosen by the WWE audience, and this is the first time, that Hart had appeared at a WWE event since the infamous screwjob of Survivor Series in 1997, and this was more poignant because it's the first time he'd been back in Montreal. On September the 11th, 1997, WrestleFest 50 Years of Funk took place in Terry Funk's hometown of Amarillo, Texas. The event was promoted as Funk's retirement, which lasted less than 6 months. The main event saw the Funker take on the WWF champion, the Hitman Bret Hart, in a match refereed by Hart's first professional opponent, Dennis Stamp. The build to the match and the match itself was a key storyline in the Beyond the Mat documentary released in 1998. Also on September 11th in 2000, the WWE Commissioner Mick Foley began his investigation into who ran over Steve Austin the previous year at the Survivor Series. Kurt Angle took on Test and Albert in a handicap match. Lita defended the WWE Women's title against Ivory. And in the main event, the champion The Rock teamed with The Undertaker to take on Kane and Chris Benoit in a no DQ tag match. Also on September the 11th, this time in 2000, over at WCW, wedding bells were in the air on the go-home edition of Nitro for Fall Brawl, as David Flair was set to marry Stacy Keibler and Kevin Nash was forced to defend the WCW Championship against Big Papa Pump with special referee Booker T and special enforcer Goldberg. 2001 will be forever known as the day of the terrorist attack in New York, and a taping of SmackDown was due to be held in Houston, Texas, is cancelled in the aftermath of those attacks. A few days later, the rearranged show would be the first mass gathering of people in the USA after the attacks, and would be one of the finest hours in WWE history, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. On September 12th, 1989, at Clash of the Champions 8, called Fall Brawl 89, the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott, earned their first ever shot at the World Tag Team titles, challenging the Fabulous Freebirds. In the main event, Sting and the Nature Boy Ric Flair took on Dick Slater and the Great Muta. September the 13th, 2001, as we just said, 2 days prior was those horrendous terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. WWE presented that live edition of SmackDown from the Compaq Center in Houston. Ongoing angles were quite rightly abandoned for the night, and the show opened with Vince McMahon addressing both the live and the TV audience before Lillian Garcia performed the national anthem. The show, as I just said, was the first mass gathering of people in the USA after the attacks, and represented one of the most monumental shows in WWE history. And that's it for this week. Hope you have enjoyed this look back at the career of the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. It has been one of my favourite shows, I think, to date. It's been really enjoyable, and it's been great to kind of reminisce about the career of Shawn Michaels, to look back at not only him as a performer, but those matches that made him an icon. Next week, we're going to be looking at a classic World Wrestling Federation pay-per-view, this time taking place from my home country, the UK, as we're going to go to Birmingham and the NEC and look at one night only. It's phenomenal. It's maybe not phenomenal, but it's known for the European Championship match between the British Bulldog and the man we've talked about today, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Until then, keep up to date with everything that's happening on Maguire on Wrestling and with the community at Team MOW on Facebook. And stay tuned to the podcast feed, as Mitch and Dimitri will be bringing the alternate commentary table every Saturday, and Mike will be back with Maguire on Wrestling every Sunday. All you need to do is search for Maguire on Wrestling on your preferred podcast provider, click that follow, and the shows will instantly download. See you next week. My name's Andy Evans. So long. I will see you at the matches. Take care. Bye-bye.
This has been Legends and Champions with Andy Evans. Thank you for listening.